today we're adding real numbers. And let's start by going over the identity property of addition. The identity property of addition says that for every real number n, n plus 0 equals n. So what does this mean? For example, let's say we have 0 plus 5. What would that equal? 5. What if we have negative 5 plus 0? What would this equal? Negative 5. And that's all the identity property is saying, that if you're adding any number plus 0, it equals that number. The inverse property of addition says that for every real number n, there is an additive inverse, negative n, such that n plus negative n, or the additive inverse, is equal to 0. So for example, the additive inverse of 17 would be negative 17. And when we add 17 plus negative 17, it equals 0. If we have 5, the additive inverse of 5 would be negative 5. And 5 plus negative 5 is equal to 0. If we have negative 3, the additive inverse would be 3. And 3 plus negative 3 would be 0. If we're adding numbers with the same sign, you add their absolute values, and the sum has the same sign as the addends. So what does this mean? In other words, for example, if we have 2 plus 3, what does this equal? 5. So both numbers are positive. When we add both positive numbers, our answer is also positive. If we add negative 2 plus negative 3, we add the number. So the absolute value of negative 2 is what? The absolute value of negative 2 is 2. And the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. If we add these and keep the sign, what do we get? Negative 5. So let's try this again. If we're adding negative 1 plus negative 10, what would our answer be? Negative 11. So there's a little song to remember when we're adding numbers with the same sign. Who has heard row, row, row your boat? Okay, many of you have. So if you think about it, it's the same melody as row, row, row your boat, but we can apply these rules and say same, same, same sign. Add and keep the sign. Everybody together. Same, same, same sign. Add and keep the sign. One more time. Same, same, same sign. Add and keep the sign. So let's say we're adding negative 24 plus negative 25. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Negative. So I already know that. What do I do next?
49.
Negative 49. So let's say we have negative 100 plus negative 300. What would my answer be? Positive or negative? Negative 400. When we're adding numbers with different signs, in other words, we have a positive and we have a negative, we're going to find the difference of their absolute values. Then the sum is going to keep the sign of the addend with the greater absolute value. In other words, if we're adding negative 2 plus 6, the absolute value of negative 2 is what? 2. And the absolute value of 6 is 6. So if we subtract these, what do we get? We have 4. But we're going to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. In this case, it's what? 6. If we try this again, if we have 2 plus negative 6, the absolute value of 2 is 2. and the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. If we subtract these, we get 4. What is the number with the greatest absolute value? Negative 6. That means that our answer is going to be negative. So how can we remember these? Well, we can also use the row, row, row your boat melody and think about it as different signs, subtract and keep the sign. Keep the sign of what? The largest absolute value. So one more time. Different signs. So help me out. One more time. Different signs, subtract and keep the sign. One more time, I can't hear you. Different signs, subtract and keep the sign. We're not singing in public, it's just us. One more time. Different signs, subtract and keep the sign. If we have to evaluate negative n plus 8.9, where n is equal to negative 2.3. When we're evaluating, what do we have to do? We have to plug in or substitute for the variable. So we're substituting for n. So we've got this negative. Then we're substituting for n. And it's negative 2.3 plus 8.9. What happens when we have both of these negatives? We've got this negative and this negative. What happens? It becomes a positive. So that means 2.3 plus 8.9. So now we've got two positives. What do we have to do? Add them. They have the same sign, so what happens? It stays the same, it stays positive. Okay, let's try this next. So we're adding matrices, and we have this first matrix at negative 5, 2.7, 7, 2. Now, my answer is also going to be a matrix.
This is never matrix.
This one, yes, they're both. We're adding matrices. Look, what we're going to do, we're going to take this number and add it to this number. See how they're on the same row and column? So, negative 5 plus negative 3. Then the next one would be 2.7 plus negative 3.5. 2.7 plus negative 3.9. Then 7 plus negative 4. Negative 3 plus 2. Negative 5 plus negative 3 would be negative 8. 2.7 plus negative 3.9. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Negative, and I have to subtract 3.9 minus 2.7. 1.2. What about 7 plus negative 4? Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Positive, so 7 minus 4 would be 3. And lastly, negative 3 plus 2, is my answer going to be positive or negative? Negative. And this right here, this would be your